All right, Bertie, it is episode 127.
Yes, 127.
And I didn't have to do a lot of hard work today. I was kind of sitting on my bum.
It was like you weren't even here, Scotty.
But yet I'm still magically here.
Yes.
Amazing. Stats machine.
The stats machine was in, PJ.
Yeah, PJ.
Talking everything about stats, analysis, what it's like doing it, how you get into it, what courses you have to do, where like his origin stories, which we always love a good origin story here, JB Waffle Hour.
He wasn't a guard, no?
No, he wasn't. Not this time around.
We have just so many guards on the podcast. Very good. And you obviously did the Waffle Game at the end.
We did the Waffle Game, of course.
As always.
It's not a JB Waffle Hour podcast episode without the JB Waffle Hour team quiz.
And a very respectable score as well.
He didn't do too bad now because a little bit outside his wheelhouse because of where he's from, but you know, he done well.
Yeah, he did all right. Right, we'll go about naming this thing.
Let's name this mother.
I'm going to go for a pretty quickly thought up name, and I'm going to go for Stats Right.
Oh yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's very good.
I was going to go Statsman and Bertie, like Batman and Robin.
Oh, I like that actually. That's really good.
Or we could go German and go Das Statsmaschine.
Das Statsmaschine. We could do that next week. Do that part 2, Das Statsmaschine.
Okay.
So the first one was what? Batman and Robin, was it?
No, Statsman and Bertie.
Statsman and Bertie. Okay. So, all right. So this is the poster just does itself now.
I tell you, going easy on you.
Okay, so it is episode number 127. Bertie,
Statsman and Bertie.
Nice.
And we also have quick bites, so make sure you listen to that every Wednesday morning, 7:02 a.m. And wherever you see us on the social medias, make sure you rate, like, share, subscribe, and follow. Scotty is MIA currently, but he will be back shortly. We have a guest this week. It's PJ. He's a statsman. That's actually what you're called.
Stats machine.
Oh, Stats Machine. Oh my God.
That's enough.
Statsman from Stats Machine. You might have seen him on, what's it called now? X. Keep changing his name. And Instagram. So we're going to have a whole episode full of what stats are used for in sports, how PJ became the Stats Machine, and a bit about your life in general.
Okay.
So it'll be nice, as always, on the podcast, nice casual. But if I do manage to trip over myself because Scotty's not here to save me or tell me how to pronounce words, we'll just go with it. Exactly. And we'll see what happens. So we've known each other now.
A few years now.
Yeah, I remember the first time we met it was at the Wicklow Challenge game. And I was like, I know him from somewhere. I said, I follow you on Twitter. So I had been following you on Twitter anyway, and we worked together with Offaly. And that's really where I learned the value of stats and your job as a statistician. So are you like Chandler? Chandler was a statistical analysis and data configuration for a multinational organisation. So is that what you were?
Oh Jesus, that's a very fancy way of putting it. No, full-time gig is business analyst. Side-time gig, performance analyst, I think, is the best way of putting it. But in saying that, business analyst it can be anything from projects to data. Like you bounce around all those sort of different pieces of work, so it is an advantage kind of thing. You're doing it on a day-to-day basis, and you're doing it when you go home in the evening, and you just get sort of sick of seeing the same numbers. You're just looking at them for a different reason. Now,
during your time in school, were you like maths and stats? Were you any good in school?
No, I was not right in school. No, I did okay. Maths would have been my thing. Maths would have been up that street. But then come leaving cert time, it was all like rote learning kind of thing, history, geographies. I was handy enough with numbers, but nothing special. Like never did accounting or economics or anything like that, and didn't really try them in college. Just there was something about trying to kind of nearly. It was not necessarily the data or the numbers; it was the actual analysis of it, kind of getting into it and kind of saying, okay, what does that actually mean? like kind of essentially being a Lego kid with numbers, for the want of a better word. Trying to get to understand what the stuff kind of meant and kind of trying to take it out of it. In Sky Sports, and what does he mean by that little dashed bar down the bottom? What are they trying to tell us? And that sort of kind of pick things apart. Now it makes games very hard to watch now. Myself, kind of, you're sitting there in the stand.
It's like you're in the matrices and all the numbers are going up and down.
You're sitting in the stand, you're just counting. That's one kick out lost. That's two kick out lost. Would they stop kicking it to that side, please?
And when you went to Lee School, what was it you applied to do in college?
I did business and politics is what I ended up specialising in.
I wasn't expecting that, to be honest. I didn't know your origin story. I wasn't sure it was going to go that way.
No, business and politics originally started was a very broad course in Trinity, and then I specialised down in business and politics.
I see your email. You've kept your Trinity email still.
Well, one of the few colleges that have left us. Let us keep our email, in fairness. Yeah, they did take away my Google Drive. I had to move all my stats into my own email account now recently.
And then, sorry, what would you say it was when you done in college? That's 4-year degree, is it?
Unfortunately, yeah, 4 years of slaving away, and that's where I met Breen, who obviously brought us together in Offaly. We got heavily involved in Trinity GA as an opportunity. Did stats for second team, did a little bit of work around the Sigerson team, and kind of just went up being treasurer again, kind of caught in the numbers and stuff like that, and got involved that way, I suppose.
And to do with the GA, and like you were obviously big into GA, but is that a specific thing that in order to be doing the stats, because obviously you have to go to a lot of games, so do you have to be in it, or as you say with the stats, is it like a separate thing? So when you're watching a game, it is about what you're interested in and doing the stats, and it's not actually about like constantly going to games and being into the sport. Like
it's a bit about like you can adapt it to every sport, but I think if you're doing it for a team, it's a lot more effective when you're there with the team. Like I do work remotely with some clubs and some teams, and it's fine and it works, but it's much more effective when you're physically at the games. The team can actually see you, and they're a bit more responsive in that sense. That it's not this mystery person at the other end. Like it's like that. Sometimes it helps, but sometimes it's nice that they have a face that they can go to, and they have people they can ask the questions.
Because you kind of do as the whole lot, so you'll kind of be with a team for their whole season and record the games and do the stats, but then people obviously can send you then video footage, and you can
or you have a lot of clubs that you'd actually have. I find that with maybe pick and choose, they'd look at their fixture list and say, okay, well, we've got X, Y and Z in championship, so we definitely want to look at those games. So you'll have a couple of clubs that nearly will cherry pick their games kind of with a gear towards the latter half of their season. Or you'd have I know, for example, in Louth, the way they have the split season and the league breaks up in half, you'll have clubs maybe that'll call you for the second half of the league because there's no jeopardy in the first half. So it really just depends on club, teams, their own ambitions, their own goals, or how they want it aligned, really.
And what would be the main way like a team would use the stats you give them? Are you involved in that, like suggesting things, or is it literally you just give them stats and it's up to them kind of to decode them, read through them and use them how they see fit?
Well, I'll try and explain as best I can, but there's plenty of times where people have disagreed. Like, I suppose, look, stats as a whole has a bit of a bad name in the sense players say, oh, here we go, we're going to get a video session, we're going to get a tongue lash and all of this, and I'm really not like that. I kind of really want to be positive, so like even I try and focus it on that self-scouting piece, that like we're really good at this and we need to be well aware that if we're that good, the other team is going to be aware that we're that good, so how do we make sure they don't get on top of that? Really kind of pushing the positives and hammering down the strengths, because if you get the guys or girls on your side, they're aligned, you're praising them, you're bigging them up, you're showing them what they're doing right, then when you come to the difficult conversations, look, we need to change this, look, we need to do that, you get a lot more buy-in, a lot more kind of willingness to kind of actually approach the information as well. There's no fear or mystique around it. It's this, I think there was an old thing years ago in probably a GA coaching course back in the original level 1s and foundation courses, the 2-star and a wish kind of thing, and that always stuck with me, even coaching or stats or anything like that. And I always said, okay, well, for any criticism needs to be balanced out with 2 pieces of positive information. So if a player has done something wrong, and players are the best analysts that you'll ever meet, like players know what they've wrong. Like, they don't need a coach, they don't need their bench, they don't need the teammate across, so they don't need the spectator saying, yep, an idiot, why'd you do that? He or she knows I shouldn't have given that pass, and they know it in that moment, so then they'll be able to see it, so they don't need to hear it twice, 3 times.
Yeah, I find with using like that, as you said, that you can't, like, it's not going in and just like completely saying, look, we're crap and all this. Like, I try and break it down into clips, like, because I think it's always pointless recording a game and just posting up saying, oh, watch that game.
Yeah.
Because I always think that there's like two kind of footballers, like people who play football and, like, you know, are good at skills and all that, but away from it, they don't like watch games and things like that. And then you have people who like have maybe more of a football brain and can understand like different systems and that, and they might get more out of it. But I always think it's better to like pick the clips that you want to work on. So, and I find great value in getting the stats from games and like changing the way we approach things, because like you might think on paper or in training this kick out strategy is brilliant, but then you might feedback stats saying, well, you went short 12 kickouts, you only won 1. But as a coach on the sideline, you never really remember those kind of things, and it's always great to have that kind of feedback. And even back, I started coaching 2012, and I remember going and buying my own camera, because at that stage it was so hard to get people to record. And even playing through out my own career, like, we didn't get like video footage or games until maybe 2014 maybe. I remember getting games recorded.
DVDs.
And which?
DVDs.
DVDs, yeah. And even at that, you'd be brought in and they'd just actually just play the game, and you'd be just watching the game. And I remember thinking, that's no good. And I remember having little sheets that I done out on Excel for turnovers and like possessions won and kickouts and people marking down. I used to get people just to tick the boxes, and I try and read through them and that. And I mean, I think it's so valuable, but it's like something to do with like the S&C. S&C wasn't really valued at different levels up until recently. Like even accounting, maybe 10 years ago it started taking off, but now senior clubs are more into it. It's filtering down into intermediate, and people realise, well, everybody else is doing that, so now we need to do it. But not only is everybody else doing it, you have to do it and get what you need out of it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's everything. And yeah, great point there about how kind of you use, and even look, when I started off, I was guilty of putting up videos saying, what am I doing here? I'm spending 20-25 minutes sessions, and you're sitting there going, what? Like, lads are walking out drained. They've either come off a pitch and they're sweating, or they're going onto a pitch and they've lost a half an hour of their evening. You have to be very conscious of the time and stuff like that. And I always found I had great fun with the club. You used to put in comedic videos. There was one lad that I caught diving completely, and oh Christ, caught him dead to rights, and he was fully convinced, I didn't dive straight up in the video session. There you go. Or just go like, you need something that people like, forget about coaching points for a minute, you need something that'll actually paying attention. A collision and a half, a nasty tackle, even
someone tripping over, like you said, or fumbling the ball,
someone falling over themselves, someone running over the sideline and cleaning out a coach. All of that sort of stuff that kind of just makes lads chuckle and kind of, oh yeah, you're an idiot, at each other, and they've make it a bit more enjoyable and stuff like that. It needs to be, otherwise there's no interest in it otherwise.
Well, what I started doing recently with them is, I think I seen, was it the New Zealand rugby team, or maybe it was the New Zealand, is it the Auckland Blues? I can't remember. And they do 15 minutes before training. So like a standard thing is you do like after train, or maybe on a Sunday, and you do it for like the hour after train. But in the 15 minutes you pick one thing we done well, one thing we done bad, and then one thing from the opposition. Yeah. And that's basically, and I found that like actually more productive, because at times we've gone like a certain player and done like analysis and broke down and say, right, well, she's the danger player, she can score 8 points in a given day off this foot, that foot. But then you've given them the information, but she still scores 8 points. So I think concentrating on like one individual player, I think you're better off kind of more focusing on yourself, unless I think really the only thing on the opposition, and maybe I'm wrong in this, is the kickouts and how to try and turn over the kickouts. I think focusing specifically on each individual player, I don't think really works at certain levels.
I think it depends on how much information you have. Like, first and foremost, you're going to have more information on yourself. And the more, like, look, people say you can get lost in the information and you have to be careful not to be overkill, but the more data you have, the more likely it is, on probability, is it to be accurate. So you start with what you know is right. If you have 2 games of an opposition and they've already played 10 games this season, and you say, oh, this player's played centre forward those 2 games, and they've kicked 6 points and 7 points in the 2 games respectively, and you're sitting there going, okay, that's a danger player. And you've completely missed the fact that the corner forward, who averages 1-4, had a high hamstring for 3 or 4 weeks, and you haven't seen him, and all of a sudden you're inside full backline and going, looking at each other going, what has happened here? So you kind of have to be very conscious of what you're putting out there. I'd agree. So you need to be able to stand over everything and have a pattern of play. Like I know from one case, we wouldn't look at an opposition unless we had one team 4, 5, 6 games on them. That we really know, okay, this is, and in some cases we look at individuals, but we're really looking at their kickouts, their patterns of play, where do they like to play, how do they like to get out, and what's their get out of jail card, where do they want to go, where is their shooting zones, and trying to find all those little, I suppose, nuggets of information. But that's just you've been at game, we've all been at games where people have had apparition games, and people think, oh Christ, this is the next coming of, I don't know, the next you could have the next free taker, the next star free taker, this is the next Clifford, this is the next that, this is the, and all of a sudden they just disappear off the disappear off the radar.
Like I find it interesting when you get stats back from games about maybe individual players, because watching the game you might think a player hasn't actually done well, and I've actually been surprised at the amount of times when you check. So you might remember the 2 balls they gave away and think, oh, they had a crap game, but they could have actually turned over the opposition 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And so everybody has their key kind of areas or their performance indicators or whatever that they might be better at, but mightn't actually be visually nice.
Yeah, and I think GA uniquely is quite challenging to attribute success to players. In a sense, like for example, let's take a kick pass. Let's say we take an interception. Who gets the turnover? The person who caught the interception or the person who pressured the kick? And what happens if 2 people pressured the kick? Or what was it a mistake? What if the runner wasn't looking and it was just a genuine miscommunication on the offensive, on the 2 offensive players? So it can be one of 3 of the defenders that can get the turnover, or you can put it down as a mistake on the opposition. You're like it's so hard to actually give accurate credit for people. So I'd have a lot of time for actually not giving out individual stats lately. I find it look, we're a collective unit. We play as a team. It doesn't matter who does what. Yes, it helps from a coaching point of view, and taking individual stats and communicating that to the individual, and only the individual, so they know where they're working and what they need to work on, and where they're helping, where they're contributing, but also kind of that they're self-aware of their own game. But as a wider team, my corner forward doesn't need to know what my wing back is doing against their measurements. But then, as you say, kind of, you have to be very careful as well what you tell. You have to be very just careful, not to confuse players or data dump players. So at the end of the day and stuff like that, it's a team sport. Give it. Yeah,
because some players are probably, and I'd have that even with clients and in the gym and that they'd get too driven by the numbers as well.
Actually, it was the age old story, because you bring up New Zealand back when the GPS vests first came on the scene, and the All Blacks were one of the first adapters, as they are for nearly everything. This is a country that's known for multi-sport athletes, this kind of thing, that you don't specialise. We let our kids play all our sports, and eventually the cream rises to the top. They've got 4 or 5 sports in their background, and they just happen to choose rugby. And this thing that you needed to have so many sprints in a game or so many line breaks, and at half time the New Zealand rugby lads were maybe sprinting 10 yards, stopping, sprinting 10 yards, stopping on the way into the dressing room to get their numbers up. And it was so obvious, because people hadn't worked out, hold on, we have to time code when the game actually starts and the half finishes. So you have to be very careful. There's an age-old quote, and it's beyond sport. I think it's when a KPI becomes a target, it's no longer a KPI. Because you're not measuring your actual performance, you're just working towards something, and it's completely different. A target is something you're looking to achieve. A metric is something you're measured against. Yeah,
so you say targets, and even in sprints, so you could set targets for distance covered, or I do in the gym about what weight to get to and what we should do. Where they are now targets, it's not the same as the KPIs.
If you tell a team we want to shoot 50% conversion rate, that's our baseline. Half the players are going to be afraid to shoot.
Yeah. Because I find there's stats should be an added thing, not the be all and end all. It's a tool that you use.
Absolutely, stats analysis video analysis, performance analysis, whatever you want to call it, under its many mysterious names. It's like S&C, it's like a physio, it's like a nutritionist, it's like a sports psychologist. At the end of the day, it's a member of the backroom team. What comes first is management and coaching. The players have to be coached. The players have to have the skills. The players have to have the team, the management, that the tactical nuance, the sporting nuance, and that's a big part of it. That it's just an added feature. It's not a must. It's not a need. I would argue probably a lot of the teams, you'll have a lot of teams that might jump on it too early. Like you say, they see everybody else doing it and I'm going to do this, I'm going to get on board, and they don't have the people equipped to do it, B, have the people to support it, and C, maybe they need to look at kind of a step or two down the ladder. It is a building block and a piece, and like that, it's only an add-on. It's not something that's I
was kind of guilty of that in 2022. I played in goals for championship because Jim got injured. And I remember we had Stephen and Shane, and they were great. Like, they recorded every game, and they had, like, you used to look back at the game, they had it tagged, so you could just click on your name and you see all the bits you were involved in, which is probably a great idea, because like that you don't have to go watch the whole game and you can see what they want you to look at. And I loved like they used to have like a preview of a game, and they'd have like clips of the opposition, and they'll have like target or whatever, where to kick out and who their good players are. And I kind of ate that, because when I'm coaching, that's what I like doing as well. So as a player, I loved it, but I probably was guilty of being too focused. And one thing was like the kick out success rate, because I had to realise like it's a little bit out of my hands, even though I'm kicking it out, because the kick out percentage, I want to try and get it up into the 80s, but it's about retention rate more so, isn't it, on the kick outs? Yeah. So once I kick it out and I hit it where I meant to hit it, what happens after that is out of my control.
Yeah, exactly. Was the kick out turned over? Was the kick out, did it create a chance? Does it create a score? Did we even get past the half? All of these sort of things. And that's like, there's a great question as part of the GA accreditation for performance analysis that I had to, and I raked my brains over it, is and the word count. It's one of the hardest things I've ever written, because it's only like 250 words per question. Explain examples of how you've taken into account players' biological, sociological, and what was the other one? And kind of norms. So I can't remember the third one, but it's all about how do you take their age into account? How do you take, well, what are they actually like as a personality? What is their so like you're kind of like, how do you differentiate the information you give a 17-year-old ladies player who's broken onto the scene versus a 28-year-old first name on the team sheet versus a 34-year-old who's, I don't want to say clinging on, but kind of is
that would be me now.
It's around 38. Is a substitute holding on, being that kind of leadership in the room, who probably won't play as much, but is there to help and provide that leadership, and is supposed to bring that new generation along. These are all completely and it comes down to, you have to be very careful what information we give to each player.
I've never actually thought about that, the difference, because sometimes I'd be thinking like, well, stats is stats, you know, you had this many possessions and this is what you do, but then as you said, it's about the delivery, because everybody will take that information differently too,
absolutely,
and use it, and then like that a 17-year-old might get more hung up on it, and then you say, as you said already, it becomes a target to try and get better at that, instead of just kind of helping your overall game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big advocate, start small, build up. So I remember being involved with one team, and I'm trying to be very careful not to name names, not to pick favourites or anyone like that, but we started with a simple set of kind of possessions and attacks, our possession stats, and then we built that out. Okay, what are we doing with our possession? Where are we going? Where are we getting turned over? And every couple of weeks we'd add a new KPI, and like it could go from attacks to attacks converted, or your turnovers, where your turnovers were, and you kind of built, and you found where people needed to be, or where you wanted to be with teams and individuals. So all of a sudden you might see, okay, after maybe 8 weeks and we've added 5 KPIs, that's it for this group of players. They don't need anything else. That is all they need. You might have a group of players, that's all they want, and they might get value out of the next level, but they don't want that, and you've got to respect that, because at the end of the day, they're volunteers. This isn't professional sports where you're pulling them in like the way they do in the NFL or basketball. Like, and again, it comes back down to like it's the variables. When you have 15 players in a field, across 2 teams, I think it's significantly harder. And the GAA is quite advanced in terms of what it has, in terms of structures, the fact that it has an actual specific GAA performance analysis accreditation pathway, which is headed up by Jack Cooney, the former Westmeath manager, is a great tool for aspiring performance analysts, and absolutely would recommend anyone, no matter what level you're at, whether you're at level 1 or level 4, to go participate in the workshops and go about gaining that accreditation, because the steps and the actual criteria to grow, like to get to level 4, you need X amount of inter-county years, and to complete certain applications. It's huge, and it really creates a pathway for analysts and an understanding of how they can deliver and how they can improve themselves, and what they can offer as a service and as a member of a backroom team.
And so what you done in college then doesn't actually lead directly into...
Absolutely. I got pulled into stats because I was doing higher level maths.
Okay.
That is the story. No, well, that's the short version of the story. So I never played football because I have a heart condition, but I love football. I came from a footballing house. My dad played, Mum played camogie, and my younger brother played. My dad was the coach of my younger brother's team, always involved. And kind of to keep me involved, my dad kind of let me do a few stats at underage. Didn't take it too seriously, but it was something to get involved and be useful. And then my home club, Glen Emmets, there was a change in management. My dad was involved with finding a new manager who would go on then be Kevin Barry from Castletown. And Kevin, when he came in, said, "Look, does anybody local do stats? All right, I just need someone to track it for us." My dad at the time says, I think, was I 18? 17, 18. I was just after doing my leaving cert, so it would have been first year or second year of college. No, it wouldn't have been in college. Jesus, I'm getting old.
So you actually kind of got into it actually without you started without actually being like qualified or going to college for whatever.
No, did nothing in it, and just said that he's some experience in tagging games. That was it, because I tagged underage games, and worked from that. Spoke with Kevin, worked carefully with him, and tried to get to understand what he needed. The first year was really basic arithmetic. Just okay, we're tagging kickouts, we're tagging players. Really basic. And the second year we looked at, let's take this up a level. We were blessed. Glen Emmets, I don't know if have you ever been to Tullyallen for a game?
I think it was.
Yeah, so you know where the clubhouse is over the pitch, right? Or there's a balcony just outside the clubhouse. So
is that the one where you have the steps down to it? No.
So there's a balcony in the clubhouse that overlooks the pitch. Could record every home game without any fancy anything. Spot really simple camera. I'm talking €200 back in the days of Argos, and a little tripod. No, honest to God. And started from there, and we recorded the games. Eventually went through different softwares, picked Performa. Look, there's an array around them. I use Performa. There's Sports Code, there's Knack Sports, there's Game Breaker, there's Dartfish.
Using your podcast, you have to other suppliers are
available. You'd run out of the names. And look, they're all actually for tools that are much more are used much more for other professional sports. I would say all of the service providers are excellent for GAA. They really do make a very conscious effort to support GAA users, and that's across all of them. And it went from there, and you kind of just it's the same as anything. You get into one thing, you're like, I think I'll add that. So you go from doing the clips and then creating the player accounts and getting the bigger accounts so the players can log in, and then you're kind of sitting there and going, well, what if we start bringing the camera to away games? Okay. Not everyone has a stand. Not everybody has a balcony. What are we going to do? Okay.
Now you need a tower.
Now I need to buy a tower. Yeah. Oh, I've bought a tower. What if we put the camera behind the goals? Yeah. Oh, I've got a tower now. I need a bigger camera. I need to have a bigger camera. I need bigger memory cards. I need bigger bags. It just keeps growing and growing and growing.